All right, welcome everyone to the February book club meet. As you know, our book, the book that we're discussing today is 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. And before everyone joined, we were just discussing this book and commenting how on the surface, you would think that this is a book about time management. And maybe this is another one of those books that's going to give you productivity hacks and time management hacks so you can manage your time better. But it's actually quite the opposite. It's actually a philosophical exploration of time, which is why we picked it up for this book club, because as you know, in this book club, we like to deal with deeper topics that help us all live and lead more consciously. And this book does exactly that. So let's dive in. So we'll share with you some quick highlights as always, then we'll move into a group discussion in smaller groups and we'll spend most amount of time in that. And then of course, we'll have our announcements as usual. All right, so why is this book called 4,000 Weeks? For those of you who have read it, you know why it's called 4,000 Weeks, because the human lifespan, if we assume, is 80 years, that gives us exactly 4,000 weeks. And for those of us who are at the midway point, like I am, that number automatically slashes down to 2,000 weeks, which is a very small number. And if I had to guess, I think the author came up with this title to bring home the fact of how short, how scary short human life actually is. So the first question that would be great for all of us conscious readers to explore is, what is your relationship with time? Because it really begins with that. For most of us, we don't have the best of relationships with time. It is actually, in fact, an adversarial relationship with time. And that comes across in our language because we're always talking about things like, oh, I have to master time and I have to conquer time. It's like it's something we're constantly battling. It's something we're constantly chasing, constantly falling behind, and it just creates a lot of anxiety for many of us. So the first idea that the author here is sharing with us in this book is, let's just stop trying to master time, because that is a losing battle for the best of us. And of course, there's so many productivity and time management gurus out there that lead us to believe that it is possible. It's just a matter of creating the right systems. And if we can do that, we can indeed be a lot more productive, a lot more efficient. And yes, while that may be true to some extent, that kind of thinking does set us up for failure, because given the finitude of time, given that we only have 4,000 weeks, it's just not humanly possible to fit everything into one lifespan, let alone one day. As you see in the book, the day will never arrive when you finally feel you have everything under control. When the flood of emails has been contained, your to-do lists have stopped getting longer, when you're meeting all your obligations at work and in your home life, when nobody's angry with you for missing a deadline or dropping the ball, and when the fully optimized person you've become can turn at long last to the things life is really supposed to be about. Let's start by admitting defeat. None of this is ever going to happen. And far from being a depressing thought, I think this is the most liberating thing that this book is asking us to really walk away with, that let's just admit this is a losing battle, because when we do, then we can release ourselves from the obnoxiously high standards we all set for ourselves of all the things we can do in any given day. And B, then we can also release ourselves from the terrible, crippling guilt that most of us feel when we constantly feel like we're falling behind. So that's idea number one. Idea number 2, can we just embrace and accept the fact that our time is limited? Because only when we accept the fact that, okay, our time is limited, then we can start to make the hard choices about what we do with our time. And one really important thing and an idea we were just discussing when it comes to embracing the scarcity of time is, it's not just about letting go of inessential things and making time for what is most essential and what is most important. Embracing the scarcity of time also means sometimes, or many times, saying no to things that matter, because that is just how scarce everything is. No matter how hard we try, speaking of books, we're never going to be able to read all the books that we want to read in one lifetime. We're never going to be able to travel to all of the countries we want to travel to in one lifetime. Maybe, I mean, if you really make it your mission, you can. But for most of us, that is going to be very difficult. So even with the things that are important to us, it's going to mean making tough choices about what you spend your time on. Productivity is a trap. Becoming more efficient just makes you more rushed, and trying to clear the deck simply makes them fill again faster. Nobody in the history of humanity has ever achieved work-life balance, whatever that might be, and you certainly won't get there by copying the 6 things successful people do before 7 a.m. So it is about making trade-offs. It is about saying no a lot, and it is about saying no also to important things. So the question 2, and this may seem like a morbid question, but actually it does make you think, which is, if you did have 1 week to live, how would you spend your time? And it kind of, when you ask yourself that question, it does make you question how you are spending your time, if you are spending it on things that are most important to you. And if you're not, how would you spend your time? What would you value? What would you let go of? So that's a second question we can discuss in our groups. And then finally, based on what your answer was to question 1 and 2, knowing what is most important to you, what are the changes you would make in your relationship with time? Some of the ideas that the book shares with us, a few practical, so there are a few practical tips as well. One of which is, if something is important to you, you have to schedule it. It's just as simple as that. Yesterday, just to share an anecdote, we invited a leader to come and address a group of women that are going through a program with us. And she does such a beautiful job of creating some measure of balance in her life. And we asked her, I was like, Shweta, you're here, you are the head of global banking of a large organization. At the same time, you make time for poetry, you make time for painting, you make time for tennis. How do you do that? And she's like, Bhavna, quite simply, I prioritize it. I make time for the things that are important to me on my calendar. And this is exactly what Oliver here says as well. If something is important to you, whether it's a hobby, a relationship, a project, instead of leaving it to chance, schedule it into your calendar. And of course, on a more philosophical level, also, if we don't want to always feel like our time is so limited, one way of making time expand is to savor time. And one way to savor time is by living for the present moment, because the more and more we're fully present for whatever it is that we're spending our time on, a hobby, a conversation, work that we love, when we give it our full attention, time appears to expand, and it just makes the whole experience more rich. So it gives us this feeling of abundance instead of always feeling like we're working with scarcity. So that's the final idea. And I love this quote: "The world is bursting with wonder, and yet it's the rare productivity guru who seems to have considered the possibility that the ultimate point of all our frenetic doing might be to experience more of that wonder." So it's not so much about how many things we can fit into our time, but the quality and the depth of the experiences that we give our attention to. that makes a difference. So on that note, let's move in to our discussions. Big thank you, as always, to our lovely book fairies who will be guiding the discussion. Once again, these are the questions and we'll leave them on the screen for you. 1, what is your relationship with time? 2, how can you embrace scarcity? How would you live if you only had 1 week to live? And of course, to make this actionable, if there was even one change you would make to how you manage time or relate to time, what change would that be for you? All right.